What are we gonna do when we get back?
What are we gonna do when we get back?
I take a shower and hit the rack.
Take a shower and hit the rack.
Welcome to Charlie Mike. If you're a combat veteran with an entrepreneurial bug and want to know what highly successful combat veteranpreneurs are doing to transform their sacrifice and experience to create their visual reality, then this is dedicated to your inspiring and fulfilling future. And now your host, Dwayne Perrell.
No way, gotta run, feet, lots of fun.
Invest in Yourself ebook is my free gift to you for listening to the show and becoming part of the CO Nation. To receive your free gift, please go to landmarklifecoaching.com. Thank you for joining us on this episode. There are so many veterans with the core strengths to become successful entrepreneurs and continue to make a huge positive impact on our country. Here we highlight the amazing successes of combat veteranpreneurs. Combat veterans, for the purpose of this show, are soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen who have served the United States in wars, campaigns, and in theater on foreign soil or hostile waters. Our guest today is Blayne Smith. Blayne is the Executive Director of Team Red, White, and Blue. As Team RWB's first employee, he has played a key role in the development, growth, and operation of what has become America's fastest-growing veteran-serving nonprofit organization. With chapters in over 200 cities, Team RWB now serves more than 120,000 members and enriches their lives by connecting them to their community through fitness, service, and leadership. Blayne is a West Point graduate and former Special Forces officer with combat tours in both Iraq and Afghanistan. He has the Distinguished Honor Graduate of the Army's Ranger School and has earned numerous military awards, including 3 Bronze Stars, one with the device for valor. Blayne grew up on Southwest Florida, earned his MBA from the University of Florida, and now lives in Tampa with his wife and children. He is a fitness enthusiast and avid athlete and regularly competes in running, triathlon, and CrossFit. All right, Blayne, welcome to the show and thank you for being a guest.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you tell our loyal listeners all about your journey from a combat veteran to a successful entrepreneur. But before we get into your entrepreneurial experience, can you give us an overview of your military experience?
Yeah, I would be happy to. So in 1997, I made the decision to go to West Point, which was, I guess, the beginning of my military career. And at the time, to be totally honest, I didn't have aspirations of being a military officer or certainly not having a career in the military. It was, frankly, just kind of a pragmatic choice for me. I joined the military for the same reason a lot of people do. It was a chance for me to get a great education, to go to college, to not have to incur a bunch of student loans and debt. And I knew that when I graduated, I would have an opportunity to have a job and be on the path to a successful life. And so that's really the way I looked at it as a very young man at 17 or 18 years old. But then I graduated in June of 2001, really thinking my military career was going to be one thing. And then a couple months later in September of 2001, as you know, the world changed. And the trajectory of my military service and really my whole life changed when the Twin Towers fell and the Pentagon was attacked. And I got sent off to Fort Hood, Texas to be a tank platoon leader and eventually became a scout platoon leader and deployed to Baghdad in that role. I spent almost a year in 2004 over in Iraq. I had a chance to work with some Special Forces guys from 5th Special Forces Group during my first deployment and was just completely blown away and impressed by those folks. And I went to Special Forces selection shortly after getting home from my deployment and was fortunate enough to make it and spent the next couple of years training and basically just trying to earn my Green Beret and earn my way onto a team. And then I spent my last 3 or 4 years at 3rd Special Forces Group as a Special Forces detachment commander and had a chance to deploy to Afghanistan with those guys. And after that, just kind of felt like I had done everything that I joined the Army to do. And it obviously been a pretty long road. 2001 to 2010 was a pretty challenging and interesting time to be in the Army. And so I separated from the Army in the early part of 2010 and just sort of started, moving on into the next chapter.
Yeah, wow, that is a very impressive career for sure. And I like how you say that, you didn't really have a specific, end result in mind, but you were able to recognize opportunity even in your deployment states. And so that's pretty impressive, because as an entrepreneur, that is a very key core strength to have, is to be able to recognize opportunity and be able to capitalize on that for your growth or the company's growth or the betterment of, even in the military, right, the groups that you're attached to. And so, I applaud you for that for sure. And, being able to obviously get into the special forces is quite a feat in itself and comes with a lot of core strengths. And, that really leads to kind of the premise that I like to talk about in the show, is how people like yourself that have achieved so much in the military and done so many honorable and admirable things, how you take those core strengths that you developed while in the military, and as you're transitioning into the civilian sector, whether it's you become an entrepreneur or you just find that career path that entices you, how you use that to your advantage and really to allow yourself to stand out from others still. And so as you were transitioning out, did you kind of know right away that you wanted to start Team Red, White, and Blue, or did you get out to, for lack of a better word, a standard job, and then you kind of figured that out as you went?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do when I got out. I mean, I did all of the things that I would consider to be sort of responsible things. I transitioned, I think, I made sure my medical records were taken care of, and I got a physical, and I started looking, several months before I got out, maybe 6 months before I was going to ETS. I started looking at job opportunities and trying to get an idea of what was available out there for me. But, I didn't have some burning passion or some clear vision for what I was going to do when I took off the uniform. I just felt like I had a wife and 2 children, and I had to, find a job and be able to provide and, start basically chipping away at my professional career, whatever that was going to look like. So I went through, some of the, the military, junior military officer recruiting organizations, and I got a bunch of job interviews, and I tried to understand, operations and sales and some, very basic job fields. And I ended up taking a job down in Tampa, Florida with a cancer diagnostics testing company, with a big laboratory company, doing sales and sales management and marketing. And it was definitely a big change from where I was. I mean, I went from, kind of having a beard and being over in Afghanistan, and 6 months later I was, wearing a suit, driving a Toyota Camry, and trying to sell, cancer diagnostic services to hospitals and doctors and surgery centers. It was a big change, but it was all just kind of part of the process, and I'm thankful for it.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of military members, as we're transitioning out, there is a large cultural gap, cultural difference, and especially, I could only imagine from the special forces side, you guys are, in different situations, and you don't necessarily always look like the average military person, as far as, like you said, you had a beard and, to blend in and things like that. And so I can imagine, you get out, all that goes away, and next thing you know, you look in the mirror, and here's this guy in this nice clean suit, right? going to his, standard job versus, the things that you're used to doing in the military, which is always, serving a higher purpose. And so, as you're working this job, were you like missing something, or you felt like there was more out there that you could do or wanted to do, and that's kind of what led to the entrepreneurial path?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't have probably put my finger on it then the way that I can now in retrospect, but I knew almost immediately that this was not what I was supposed to be doing, at least for the long run. And I think this is an important thing to call out, though, is that while I knew I wasn't going to probably spend my career in medical sales, I did recognize that it was a good job, and it was helping me to make a living, and it was, buying me some time and allowing me to learn about corporate America and to learn about business and to learn about selling, which if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you don't know how to sell, you need to go figure out how to sell, because that's a critical part of running or starting or growing any business. And so I was getting a lot of good out of it. And I think I recognized that it was a good job and I was getting some value from it. But I was also growing increasingly unhappy because I didn't have much of a sense of identity. I didn't recognize the guy in the mirror, as you mentioned. I didn't feel like I was attached to any kind of higher purpose. And I struggled with that a lot. And especially when I looked at it objectively and I said, I'm making a good living. My company is good to me. I have good potential here. I like my boss. There's no reason I shouldn't be extremely happy in this job. People would fight to have this job. And yet, why are you so unhappy in it? And that I struggled with just that aspect for quite a while. And it wasn't until later that I kind of understood that I'm just a bit of a different creature. And I need to, whether it's in my job or in other avenues, I need to become part of something that I really believe in, that I can sink my teeth into, because it was really crushing me not to have that.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean, just from, my experience being in the military and what I was able to do while I was in, I was by no means, at the level you're at with the special forces and things like that. So I can imagine there's even that higher calling to do something of greater value outside of yourself, because I know I talk at times in people that I coach, veterans that are in transition, as well as during these podcast interviews, how I chased an ambition for 20 years, and I always had this something was missing, right? I always kind of knew I wasn't serving something greater than myself for quite a while, and I would for short spurts here and there, and I was able to serve post 9/11 on two of the combating terrorism teams stateside at Defense Intelligence Agency and the FBI, running their information technology infrastructure. And so that was 6 years of grueling work, but boy, was it rewarding. Just knowing again I was back to serving that higher purpose. And I think that, that people kind of don't recognize that, or they don't put that much value. That you have that inner calling, and so you've really at some point have to satisfy it, because like you said, you start to become disenfranchised with who you are and what you're doing. So as you started to figure these things out, can you kind of walk us through how you got started with your Team Red, White, and Blue?
Yeah, so frankly, I was pretty lucky. My friend Mike Irwin, who I'd served with at 3rd Group, he was our battalion intelligence officer. We had left Fort Bragg around the same time, and I had gone to Tampa to get a job in corporate America, and he had gone off to the University of Michigan. He was actually still in the Army, but was going to grad school sort of for an Army assignment. And he realized that this was a lot different. Ann Arbor, Michigan was much different than Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and he felt really, he didn't feel connected to the community that he was in, especially after that really intense period that we were together at 3rd Group. And he really felt like veterans needed a way. At the time, he felt like wounded veterans especially needed a way to be connected to their community in an authentic way, because we were seeing them being made heroes at dinners and taken on ski trips and all sorts of cool stuff. But what was happening once these folks were kind of discharged from inpatient care or active duty and sent home? And so Mike actually founded the organization with the intent of connecting veterans one-on-one with people in their community. And it was just sort of this spark of inspiration that really got going. And I was a friend of Mike's, and I was around sort of from the beginning and was helping with raising money and doing some volunteering and things like that. And after about a year, we had raised enough money and gotten enough momentum to where we knew we were onto something, but there wasn't really a whole infrastructure in place yet. The model wasn't completely fully baked out. And Mike and I talked a lot, and he knew that I was doing well, but not super happy in my job. And he said, "Hey, I think we've raised enough money to hire an executive director and for somebody to work on this full time. And I know you've got a good job, but if you're interested in doing it, we could certainly use the help." And so I said, "Give me a few months to get kind of my affairs in order here, and I'll do it." So I quit my job and became the only employee of the organization for a while, and decided we were going to try to put some meat on it.
Yeah, wow, that's impressive. Quite an opportunity, but clearly you've taken advantage of it and used a lot of skills that you already have to be able to make such a large impact. I hear this organization's name quite a bit in the veteran community, and so that's pretty impressive because there are a lot of nonprofits in the veteran community, and if you can push to the top and be as well recognized as you guys are, that's extremely impressive, and add the value to the community that you guys are doing, that's even more impressive. So, based on your military experience, just for our listeners that are interested in, stepping out and becoming an entrepreneur, do you have any particular core strengths that really stand out to you that you either developed in the military or became very enhanced in the military as a result of your training that you find instrumental to your success now?
Yeah, so there are probably a bunch. I would say the biggest one for me personally has been the ability to kind of work in the special forces. We would call it by, with, and through the other people. So basically figuring out a way to create force multipliers. And I think if you're starting a business, it can be really overwhelming because there's a lot to do. And if you're the only employee, or maybe you've got a partner, between you or the one, maybe there's two of you, you've got to do every job. Someone's got to be the CEO, the COO, the CFO. Someone's got to be the sales manager, right? I mean, there's a lot to do. Someone has to manage the website or all of the things that are involved in running a business. It can be overwhelming. And if you try to do it all on your own, it's going to be very challenging. So, what I did, and what I think a lot of people that are successful end up doing, is they find a way to build a good team of people around them, and they empower them to believe in what's going on and then to execute against the mission. And sometimes if you're running a small business, that can even be people like your vendors, your customers. I mean, there are so many really ingenious business models out there now where you can do affiliate sales. You can have people who are brand representatives and ambassadors. Your suppliers can be a great advocate for your business if you have a great relationship with them. But I would say that figuring out who's on your team, who's involved in your business, who are the stakeholders, and it doesn't necessarily mean just partners and employees. It could be everybody involved in the ecosystem of the business. What are their incentives? How can we align incentives and get everyone kind of motivated and on the same page to where you've got other people out there helping you to succeed, and it's not just you at 3 a.m. with your laptop, trying to figure everything out, because it's probably not going to work for very long that way. There's just not enough coffee in the world to make that go.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the things that like you said, that's absolutely key is building that network of people around you. And you and I had been talking briefly before the interview, and one of the things I mentioned was looking at your team that you have built and surrounded yourself with to, run and grow this organization. And when you look at the bios of all of them, it's like, wow, these are some really impressive people doing some really impressive things, not only from their time in the military or their prior careers, for those that aren't prior military, but what they're doing now at the organization is just, is really, really amazing. And so, you can see that you take that to heart is in you building and utilizing an amazing network, not only internal, but like you said, external with partners and vendors and things like that. And having everybody incentivized to produce at the highest level and stay engaged is critical to the success.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that when a lot of people start a business, they make the mistake of thinking that they want to be in charge. One of the reasons that they started a business so that they could work for themselves and kind of run the show. And I see a lot of people on their email signature blocks, CEO of whatever. And it's like, listen, you got a 1 or a 2 person organization. Like, I guess you're the CEO, but let's not get too caught up in titles here at this point. You're a lot of things to that business besides the CEO. And you need to be comfortable bringing other people into work, whether it's in the business as an employee or as a partner, or as an adjacent business that you maybe do some work with. You got to be comfortable bringing in people that are smarter than you and better than you, because you're not going to be able to do everything. And if you're intimidated by bringing folks in that are high achievers and are motivated and ambitious, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you want your business to succeed and you want it to grow. And so you should be bringing in people that are rock stars and are ambitious and getting them, on board for the big win so that you can grow the business and have success together. But if you feel threatened by, somebody coming in and having too large a stake or too large a say-so in the day-to-day operations, you're going to limit yourself. And that's a personal choice, but I've always kind of felt like I don't want to be limited by me.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're going to run out of steam too fast. I need some more horsepower, and don't be afraid to go find it.
Yeah, that's a great point, because so many people can become, intimidated or afraid that somebody will come in and outshine them, when really that's the goal, right? You want them to come in and outshine you and help take the organization to the next level, because we all only know so much, and we don't know what we don't know most of the time. And so having the council of multitudes around you is absolutely critical. So, okay, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to get into more of the core strengths that Blayne has developed in the military that he feels is critical to the success of building this organization. So we will be right back. Landmark Life Coaching's vision is to be the nation's premier coaching partner for inspiring and empowering those in transition. They partner with courageous groundbreakers and transitioning veterans to create fulfilling and empowering futures that they desire. They have partnered with various entrepreneurs and transitioning veterans to leverage their core strengths and implement the framework for the future they always dreamed of. Could you or anyone you know benefit from a success partner to bring clarity to your future or their future? If so, please check out landmarklifecoaching.com for more information and charliemikepodcast.com for the Charlie Mike Podcast, showcasing the successes of combat veteranpreneurs. Okay, we are back with Blayne Smith from Team Red, White, and Blue. And just before we went to break, Blayne was going over some of the core strengths that he had developed in the military that he has found absolutely critical to building and growing Team Red, White, and Blue. And I have to agree, these are some really fundamental things that are important to any organization. So Blayne, is there anything else that kind of comes to mind that's, for somebody who's kind of on the fence, about stepping out and becoming an entrepreneur, or has stepped out and they're kind of stuck, they've grown their organization to a certain extent, but they're not really sure where to go. Is there any, advice you would give them on those areas?
Sure. Yeah. And I think those are two questions. The first one I would say is, I think most like corporations, and I think most veterans themselves don't give themselves enough credit for how creative and adaptable and just sort of ingenious they are. I think a lot of people associate discipline and teamwork, and punctuality, like those are the hallmarks of veterans. And those things are true, I suppose. But, what I saw when I was a scout platoon leader, and certainly what I saw when I was an SF team leader, was I saw guys that were figuring out ways to solve problems that they had never seen before, that were figuring out ways to be successful with limited resources, to deal with, big personalities and, everything from like local mullahs to warlords to, the conventional army guys in their battle space to interagency. I mean, the ability to build coalitions and to solve problems creatively and to really be resourceful, that's what I saw was the hallmark of a combat veteran. And I think if you're getting out and you want to start a business, it can be intimidating because you're used to the structure, kind of the task, condition, and standards of military life. And, entrepreneurship does not offer you that. But you probably are much better than you think at being able to create a plan, start executing the plan, and then depending on how things go, you adapt. And it's just like every op-ord that was ever written, we say that, look, this is the plan, but no plan survives first contact with the enemy. And business is the same way. And so I would just say, don't be afraid to make a plan, make it a good plan. It should be solid, and understand it's not going to go exactly the way you planned, and be willing to adapt, and you'll be just fine. I kind of forget, what was the second part of the question now? I forget. It was along the same lines, but, giving people advice on stepping out and those that have already stepped out, right? Okay.
Who want to take it to that next level.
Yeah, sorry about that. So the second part I think is actually really interesting because this goes to some of the things we were talking about earlier. You need to know as you get going with your business, are you starting a business or are you creating a job for yourself? And like both are okay, but they're kind of separate things. And so my guess is, and this isn't true 100% of the time, but my guess is a lot of folks that start a business and it goes well for a while and then it kind of hits a plateau or gets stuck. It's probably because they haven't really built a business that can sustain itself. They probably haven't empowered the people around them. They probably haven't built enough systems. They probably haven't created it to the point where it could run well for a week or two without them. And that's kind of a scary thing. But, if at some point you're not going to want to work 80 hours a week and be the only person that knows where everything is and all the passwords for everything, right? I mean, at some point you've got to build some systems and get some other people on board and get to the point where this thing can run at least sort of on autopilot to some degree. And that's when you can step back, look more strategically at your business, and start making good decisions with perspective that will allow it to make the next jump. If you don't do that, you're just going to be grinding away in the business all the time, and you might make slow incremental improvement, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah, no, that is some great advice. Being able to, and I think that is a good distinction. Are you just trying to create a job for yourself and just kind of sustain status quo, or are you really looking to grow a business where you can leverage others and have those strong internal systems and empowering those around you so that you can step back? And that's a great point, because you really don't know how well your business is built until you can step away and see how it operates without you, because you'll think you have the right systems, you've got the right processes, but you don't know for sure until that day that you take the 2-week vacation to see how it runs.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a book out there that millions of people have read, but it's called The E-Myth, it's a very quick, very easy read. I would recommend anybody that has started a business and is struggling to scale or is looking to start a business to read that book. It's, like I said, it's very simple, short to read, but it really highlights very succinctly the need to kind of systemize your business. Even if you don't plan for it to ever be really, really big, at some point you're going to want to be able to step back and, if nothing else, just think about the business without having to be, doing the bookkeeping and running the register and baking the pies and doing everything every day.
Yeah, no, that's good information. So, along those lines of being able to build your business to sustain itself and future growth, what's kind of the next major milestone for you guys at Team Red, White, and Blue for growing what you're doing?
So we're really doing two big things right now. It's actually kind of topical to my last comment, but we have two big initiatives going on this year. One is our leader development program. So over the last few years, we've been building out a leadership development program because we are a volunteer-led organization, essentially. And so the only way that you can have a couple hundred chapters across the country led by volunteers and do it successfully is if you're making very consistent investment in those volunteer leaders. So they've got to know, just how the organization operates, but also a lot of leadership stuff, a lot of communication stuff. Just as much as we can invest in our volunteer leaders, we want to, through leadership academies and leadership camps that we run all over the country every year. And we're also getting ready to launch an e-learning platform that all of our members and leaders can have access to. That's going to drive home a lot of this training and education and leadership development as well, called eagleleader.org. So we are pumped to get that out because that's going to make a big difference for us in our ability to continue to train and grow leaders, which is the lifeblood of the organization. The other piece is a lot of really not so sexy back-end data stuff. So we're doing a big infrastructure CRM implementation this year that's going to allow us to, understand our members better, communicate with them better, keep them engaged, track data more accurately, understand our results, our outputs, and our outcomes of our members much better. And that's just a huge, it's kind of a pain in the butt kind of a lift, but it has to be done in order for us to be a good professional organization. So, but we're doing a lot of other things, but in terms of actually growing the organization, growing the business, and becoming more effective, those are probably the two most important projects we have going on right now.
Yeah, and those are important, like you said, because if you're not taking care of the internal structures of the organization, eventually you will stop growing, or things will actually start regressing because it's not sustainable for the long term. And I think a critical part that you brought up in your organization is the fact that a lot of your leaders are volunteers. You want them to have the same leadership training, leadership, principles that they're operating from. So no matter where this individual is operating, you can pretty much guarantee they're operating the way you would expect them to, versus having these diverse ways to do it. And, that eventually would become very self-evident between people that are using the service and, participating within the organization as well. So a lot of organizations, they kind of forsake the infrastructure over time. They keep going until the point that it becomes so painful that either they got to invest so much money all at once to do it, and things are suffering while they get the stuff in place, or they experience a setback that then forces them to do it.
Yeah, like I said, it's not fun. It's not a glamorous part of the process, but if you're trying to build a pyramid, you have to have a really solid base, and that base building, especially in a people business. I mean, if you're in a distributed business with people all over the country and you're entrusting volunteers or really anybody, I mean, there's a lot of variability from person to person and city to city, and that part of that is great. Part of that diversity and part of that autonomy is really what makes it great. But at the same time, there's got to be an underlying foundation of this is who we are. This is our culture. These are our values. This is our ethos. This is sort of the standard way we operate, and this is what our members expect from an experience with us. And as long as you're there, then you can sort of elaborate and be creative from that point. And that's a fine line to walk sometimes. Trying to figure out like how much structure do we put in place versus how much autonomy do we give. And some people are always going to want more autonomy. Some people are always going to want more guidance. So you can't nail it and do it perfectly every time. But that's something that you constantly need to be thinking about in your business is, am I finding that proper balance of giving people clear and concise guidance so they know what they're supposed to be doing and they feel like they can operate confidently, and they can move with a purpose, but also allowing them to have enough autonomy to get it done in a way that works well for them. And every individual is different. Every business unit's going to be different. So you can never just sort of feel like you've checked that block and you're good, because it's always going to change, and you just got to keep working on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that in different companies that I've worked for, where it was actually had very solid entrepreneurial spirit within the organization, privately held, and the different geographies and business units and divisions all had a somewhat different way of going about it. But at the end of the day, they all really knew it all had to come back to what the main organization's mission and vision is. And so being able to tie that back is absolutely critical. Otherwise, you can really kind of grow separate entities within your organization that aren't working to that same vision. So.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, well, this has been an amazing conversation. As we're running out of time, I'd like to give you an opportunity to let our listeners know how they can get in contact with you or learn more about your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, we'd love for you to come and be a part of Team RWB. It's open to everybody, veterans, civilians. And like I said, we're in a couple hundred cities around the country. So the more people involved, the better. And you can just check us out at teamrwb.org. All the information is there. There's a button at the top that says join the team. It's quick and it's easy and it's always free. So if you're interested in getting involved with veterans in your community, I would definitely recommend doing that. In terms of me personally, I'm kind of on all the normal social media channels. Would love to chat and help out any way I can. So I'm at Blayne PS on Instagram and at Blayne P Smith on Twitter. And you can find me on Facebook. And yeah, I would love to be a part of the conversation.
Great. Well, thank you again for being on the show. And most importantly, thank you for your service to our country.
Happy to do it. Thank you for having me on.
Remember, loyal listeners, we are the home of the free because of the brave.
Thank you for tuning in to Charlie Mike Podcast with Dwayne Perro. Our objective is to bring successful veteranpreneurs to help inspire and provide insight into what helped them become successful, with the hopes you can take away various strategies you can implement in your entrepreneurial journey. Visit us on iTunes, leave us a rating and review, and let us know what you thought of the show. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Hoorah!